This is Studio 809.
All right, welcome to the Outdoors with Hiking Bob podcast. I'm your host, Hiking Bob Falcone, and you could find me on my website at hikingbob.com, which has links to my social media, my newly returned columns at the Colorado Springs Independent, all the other podcasts I've done, my photography website, and also you can visit there and sign up for my newsletter, and also contact me if you have any questions or suggestions or ideas for topics or guests for the podcast. Also, you can help support this podcast at Patreon, patreon.com/hikingbob. Today, my guest is Hector Estevez, who is the CEO of Centum Research and Technology, and his company has created a piece of equipment, some technology that will greatly, I guess the best way to talk about it, will greatly enhance somebody's ability to be located and survival if they're lost in the wilderness. Hector, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you for inviting us to participate in the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about our technology.
So if I understand it right, this is basically a device that you put in a helicopter. Is that the right way? Tell me how this thing works. I guess the idea is it locates your cell phone even in a place where there's no cell phone coverage. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The rationale behind of Lifeseeker is that the cell phone is the most extended beacon in the world. So everybody has a phone in the pocket. So our original idea was to try to find this phone so we can find the person. So the Lifeseeker, let's say, is a device that you can install in a drone, in a helicopter, or in a fixed wing. And from the air, we can create a kind of fake network so we can detect the phones, even if the phones are in a remote area without signal, because we are providing them the signal. So the phone tries to connect to our system, and in this process, we are able to get the location of the phone.
Okay, so is the Lifeseeker basically the phone sees it as like just another cell phone tower, so it connects to it. It kind of imitates a cell phone tower. Is that kind of a good way to describe it?
Yeah, it's a kind of, let's say, it's like a small cell tower designed to be installed in the helicopter or in the drone. This is the approach we did in the very beginning,
Okay.
Because the limitation with the network is that the antennas are fixed in some locations. So even if you have coverage, if you try to triangulate the position of the phone, depending on the area, it's very difficult to have a very good accuracy, So the idea of having a kind of antenna flying all the time is that you can put the antenna wherever you want. So you can triangulate with many points at the same time, so you can get in the end a very good location.
Okay. So does this require the person with the cell phone to have anything installed on their phone, an app? It just works with just a plain old-fashioned cell phone? They don't have to do anything with it? Is that how this works?
This is a very good question, because we don't rely on the person to do anything before. It means that they don't need to install anything in the cell phone. So it's a regular cell phone in a regular mode of working mode, let's say. So the phone is connected to the network, or is in an area without signal, and we are going to do all the stuff to get the location. The person doesn't need to do anything.
Cool. And you mentioned that this is, I know in your video, and I'm looking at your website, which looks awesome, that it's in a helicopter, but you said this is actually small enough that you could put in a drone. Out here, we have a couple of helicopters, but not every agency can afford a helicopter, but most of them now have a drone. So this is actually small enough that a drone can carry it?
Yeah, we started with the idea of developing it for a drone, But at the beginning, the drone sector, let's say, legal-wise, was slower or than expected. So we started with the helicopters, but from the beginning, we understood that having a very small box for a small drone would be a great asset, not just for those with helicopters, but also for others with less resources. So now, in the last 3-4 years, we are marketing as well the version for drones, and it's a really small box. It's less than 2 pounds. It's and you can install in almost any kind of drone.
Great. So you kind of mentioned that you've had this for a few years now. How long has you had this technology? How long have you been, this Lifeseeker? How long has it been available to agencies to have out there?
Yeah, we started our marketing activities in 2016. So we got our first customers at that time. I remember the Luftwaffe, is the Swiss Air Force in Switzerland. They were our first customer, and with them we we started to grow. Because once you start working on the real scenario, the system evolves faster, so you can reach new customers, and also you can demonstrate that the new way of working is successful, regarding to the previous one. So let's say 2016 was the very beginning of the marketing activity, first sales, and until now.
Great. And is this something that an agency, like a search and rescue agency, would they have to purchase this? Is this something they can rent? How does that work? I guess they just buy it, install it on whatever they have, and go from there. Is that how that works?
Yeah, we have different business models because in the end, we like to say that we are a company with a purpose, with a company with soul. Is not just a business, it's a business with soul. In the end, we are trying to help search and rescue agencies to improve their way of working, So we are trying to develop business models to adapt to the customer needs. It's true that the most common is to buy the system, most of the customers, they buy the system, they install the system in the helicopter, the drone, or whatever, and then they pay a small fee per year in terms of maintenance to keep updated with new software versions and so on. But the main cost is the first is the purchase. But it's true that we also have available other business models like the renting one. You can rent for several months with different options by the end of the renting period.
Okay. So as part of this podcast and, the research I've done and my experience, I've always told people two things. One of which is your cell phone is typically not going to help you because here, especially in Colorado and the mountains in the Western US, we have a lot of places where there's no cell phone coverage. I can go an hour out of this big city I live in and have no cell phone coverage. And I've also told people that carry a personal locator beacon that works off of satellites to help them be located in case they get into an emergency. Would you say that this replaces that, or is that still good advice for people to have one of those beacons? I guess part of the problem is you don't know what agency might have a Lifeseeker and what agency might not. So do you think this is a complement to having a personal locator beacon, and or do you think that eventually this will replace having something like that?
Let's say that we don't think that we want to replace any others. We want to add more value to the same business, So in the end, we think that we are a very good complement to other tools already available, because I'm going back to the beginning. The rationale behind is that the cell phone is the most extended beacon in the world. So we don't need to ask anyone to have a cell phone. But not everybody can afford to have an inReach or to have a personal beacon, so, or maybe when you are in a more professional environment, it's more typical to have this kind of assets. But when you are talking to regular people, maybe they decide to go to the mountains without all the preparative they could need. So I think this is the business case, let's say, for the Lifeseeker. All those people, going to the mountains without other resources. So I wouldn't say that we are going to replace any other. I think we should live together and try to improve the success in these search and rescue missions. This is the goal in the end.
I guess I would see it that for you to deploy a Lifeseeker, they would have to know roughly where you were and that you were missing to begin with, whereas the beacon would tell them that, and then they could use the Lifeseeker to really narrow down your location pretty quickly. So I'm seeing that as a good complement to each other. The beacon's going to tell somebody you're in trouble. The Lifeseeker is going to help the agency find out where you're at. Does that sound like that's kind of how you envision this working, the two pieces working complementary to each other?
Yeah, in the end, because I think all the tools we can make available for the search and rescue organizations are good tools, because, and we have some examples with other kind of competitors that we are not competing in the end, but for example, the RECO, they have different application, in some cases they work very well. In other cases, we are faster, depending on the case. But for sure, and as you said before, sometimes you can have a raw idea of that someone is in distress in this location, but this location maybe is 2 kilometers, square kilometers or square miles. And with the Lifeseeker, you can go there, and in a few minutes, you can get less than 30 meters location, so you can do the rescue and you can finish the mission. So I think we have to, let's say, educate the search and rescue organizations in this way, try to use the best tool in the best moment. It's like the cameras or other systems you have on board.
I guess I go back to my previous career as a firefighter, where we had a truck with a lot of stuff on it, and when we got there, we just picked what was going to be the right tool for the job, and just deployed whatever we had available that was the best tool for the job. So I guess this is kind of the same thing. One of the things that's amazed me with this is how fast you say that this can locate somebody. So first, let's start with, if they deploy this with a drone, for example, because almost everybody out here, every agency out here has a drone. They deploy this with the drone. How big of an area or how small of an area do they have to have an idea of where you're at before they can deploy it? I mean, do they have to know where you're at within, I think you mentioned like maybe a kilometer or a mile, a square mile, or does it work off a big range, or do they need to have a pretty good idea where you're at to begin with before they can deploy this?
Yeah, depending on the system, the Lifeseeker Mini, that is the one for drones, in a remote area, we can have a range radius about around 3 miles,
Okay.
radius. So you can swap a big area with the drone in a few minutes. If you are close to a city, this range is going to be reduced a little bit because of the interference and so on. But with this range, you can work in big areas. You don't need to have a very small location or a very small area to search, And and this is one of the reasons why we can do it really fast. Because once we are flying, you have to think that we have line of sight with the cell phone from the air. So if the phone is in our range, we are going to detect it very fast. And once we detect the phone, we need maybe 1-2 minutes more to do the final location. So it works really fast because we are working with radio frequency. We are working with signals. We are not relying on the humans to do, or to see the target. This is the idea behind.
So one of the pieces of advice I give somebody is to make sure they have a battery to charge their phone. That's really important here because obviously if the phone is dead, this is not going to work at all. But so as long as their phone is working, I really like that this is very passive for the person who's out there, that they don't have to do anything. They just have to have their phone on for the Lifeseeker to receive the signal. And after that, the Lifeseeker and the search and rescue people pretty much do everything after that. It's, as long as your phone is on, this is going to find you. I really like that this is very passive on the end user. How would somebody be able to determine if their local search and rescue agency has the Lifeseeker available for them? Do you have like a list of agencies that have this on your website, or do they have to call and say, "Hey, do you have this thing?" How would if I'm going out to the mountains today, how would I know if my search and rescue team has one of these?
Yeah, it's a good question because we are trying to develop a community, to let the people know where you can find a Lifeseeker or not. So far, we don't have a list. I mean a public list in our website. For sure, what we suggest our customers is once you invest in this kind of tools, you should invest as well in the education and the advertising, because in the end, in the last few years, I remember the search and rescue organizations telling people, okay, keep your battery or keep your phone off or put in airplane mode because you need to save battery. Now you have to do the opposite. You have to say them, okay, try to keep with you an extra battery because your cell phone maybe saves your life. So I think we need to work in this regard. I mean, so imagine if an agency in Colorado invests in this technology, they should invest as well in letting people know that they have this tool. So the cell phone should be always available to be useful.
So it's kind of a public education campaign. We have this, but what we told you before, turn your phone off. Now do the opposite, leave your phone on. So we could find you with it. If there's somebody listening to this who is a search and rescue agency, and maybe they're just now hearing about this, although I can't imagine this hasn't gotten around. What does something like this, say they wanted to buy a small one for their drone, what would something like that cost an agency to purchase?
Yeah, let's say in terms of cost, we are talking about, we are starting around $100,000.
Okay.
This is the starting point. Then depending on the model and depending on several options, but let's say this is a good reference for an agency. Okay. Then for sure we have a special program from time to time. We have also different business models, but it's true that even if we try to make it cheaper, these kind of technologies are still expensive because when you become airborne, everything is more expensive, because you have to deal with all the regulations, you have to qualify the systems to be installed in the helicopter and certified. So, and also these kind of technologies are very rugged in terms of they can survive with very low temperature, with very high temperature, with vibration, with all these scenarios. The system is ready to deal with them. Okay, so we are talking about high technology. So this is the range of prices right now.
I imagine too that in the event that the drone that it's attached to has a hard landing, they want this thing to survive. So it's got to be built to be fairly durable, so that they can know that they can rely on it if something happens. And out here in Colorado, where we have, 20 below in the mountains in the winter is not unheard of. And today here in Colorado Springs, where we have hundreds of thousands of people, it's going to be in the upper 80s and close to 90. So we have every extreme possible out here. And I imagine in the desert areas in Arizona, where it's over 100 degrees most of the year, this is the kind of thing that, like you said, you have to plan and design this for every kind of environment. This sounds like just life-changing and really game-changing technology. And I can't see how this doesn't become a more widespread thing, especially because of how just passive it is for the end user, for the person being rescued. Your company is based in Spain, so I imagine that this got its big start in Europe. How has the adoption been of your technology here in the United States and in North America? Is it starting to pick up steam? Do you already have a lot of agencies with it? I just heard about this about a month or so ago, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool stuff. How's the adoption going with this technology here in the United States?
Well, I think we have to distinguish two things, because I think the interest is really, really high, and we'll receive a lot of inquiries from search and rescue teams in the US. But we had to deal with the certification process to sell the system in the US. So we went through the FCC, and it took a while to get the certification. And we finished a few months ago. So now we are really starting our marketing activities to sell the products, So we are getting now our first customers. By the end of the year, I think we are going to have several units flying in the US. And let's hope the next year it could be an asset for maybe not most of the Americans, but at least to start covering some states and some areas, as we did in Europe before, because we started, step by step, convincing people, and then with the results, because in the end, the best asset we have now is the success cases we already achieved with the system. And this is what our customers are sharing between them. So this is the motivation to invest in this technology. So we think sooner or later in the US, we will have a good fleet of systems flying and helping search and rescue organizations to save lives.
I can see this being a thing that maybe not every agency initially, at least, would have to purchase one, but a regional type of concept where one agency that's surrounded by a lot of other ones might be able to purchase it, or they purchase it as a team, and then because obviously this is not something that every agency needs to use every day, but when they need it, it's one of those things, when you need it, you got to have it. And that if there's an agency nearby them that has it, then they could pick it up and say, hey, can you send this thing out here and help find somebody for us? I see where that can be a regional approach. And here in Colorado, we have a statewide search and rescue network. So, a couple of these deployed around the state would probably be really very useful and really pretty exciting. Hector, I can't think of anything else I want to ask you. You've really done a great job describing this thing to you. Is there anything else that you might want to tell us about this that I haven't asked you about?
Well, I think connected with this last reflection you did, I think it's very interesting the approach you can do for example, a state level, because it's difficult that every agency can buy one system, but you can collaborate with other agencies. So you can have like a state level program with a few systems, and then others spread around the state, and trying to develop a collaboration system to try to cover the territory with a bunch of systems, And this is good. I think in the end, as I said at the beginning, we have a business, but it's a business with soul, and we have to make it affordable, and we want to help the agencies to have the system. It doesn't matter if they buy one each or they share the system to, in the end, to save lives. That this is what we want to help to do. And as I said before, I think this is not it's not an idea. This is something that is happening. Maybe it's new in the US, but in Europe we have a long track record saving lives with the system, and also with amazing examples of people in real danger that thanks to the speed we can perform the mission, they were alive when they were found, you know. So we hope that all these conversations, you know, on the media can help also agencies to move forward and to talk to us and to understand how we can improve their operations. You know? And thank you very much for inviting us to share these reflections and also this information with the audience.
Well, I'm always excited. I'm a kind of a technology guy, so I like tech and stuff like that. I'm also, a first responder and I'm a hiker. So all these things kind of come together for me and make this pretty exciting. And a lot of it's the same way for my listeners. I have your website in front of me. It is very exciting looking. It's very dynamic. I am going to put a link to it in the show notes, so people who are looking at this on their iPhone or their whatever device they're looking at it will see the link and they can go there. So if you're a hiker and you're interested in this, there'll be a link. If you're a search and rescue agency and you're interested in this, there'll be a link. And I'm pretty excited about this. I would love to see something like this become a fairly commonplace device and just make search and rescue operations go so much faster. I think that this is just really technology that's very exciting. Hector, thank you so much for taking the time. I think it's probably late afternoon there in Spain where you're at, and it's early morning here in Colorado, but I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about this and for being a guest on the show. Really exciting stuff. This is the Lifeseeker technology that can locate somebody with an airborne device on a drone within meters with a cell phone that just happens to be on. It doesn't need anything. I really like this. So Hector, once again, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Bob, for inviting us.
Thank you.